Hi, this is Dr. Don. This is the missing video one that covers, I should say, the walkthrough on question one in the Lab 4 remix. And we're going to talk about question one because that's where you have to do some filtering of your data in order to get down to material that you can use. So here's the question. For the year 2005 only, so that's kind of flagging that we need to filter the data just for 2005. We want to find the correlation between perceptions of corruption and positive affect, and then create a scatter plot. And we want to talk about the relationship between positive affect and perceptions of corruption. Given two hints, it says see code chunk 11 and rehearse part 1. And then it also says, here's some ideas on how to add a filter. Now I'm going to show you some ideas on how to do that in this video. So let's scroll on down. So here's this chunk that we need to get from rehearse 1, lab 4, code 11. So I'm going to click over there. You can't see me going up here. I keep the labs open in the window. And here is that code chunk, CC11. Now, unfortunately, the nature of the beast, given we've got this very large code chunk, that R, when it runs, if it recognizes a section of your code that it should output something, and it can, it will. So here, we've got a first part here where we are preparing this World Happiness Report data file that we previously loaded, and we want to calculate the correlation coefficient in this step 2. Because R can do that, it's got something to output, it outputs it, and that breaks up our CC11 into another part. Fortunately, it does give us the little copy code there. So I'm going to go ahead and copy both pieces, copy code, go back into my code chunk. That's the top part. Now I'm going to go back here again and copy this second piece and move it into my code chunk. So here we've got the code that we need in order to complete this question, but we've got to edit it, of course. We're using the White House, I keep saying White House, World Happiness Report data file, and we loaded that earlier in the worksheet, and you can see after I cleaned out the environment and loaded that chunk, we've got the World Happiness Report data right there. Let's take a look at it real quick. I like to click on it here and open it in the source editor window there in a spreadsheet-like fashion. So you can see we've got variables here, countries, years, and then we've got a number of other variables there. And as I go across here, you can see that we've looked at a number. There's perceptions of a corruption and positive affect. And as I go on over here, I notice some of these columns have rows, observations with the NA, and that can give us problems. So we need to filter to get rid of those particular observations, and that's what filter does. Filter removes rows of data, so that would make our operations work a little bit better. So let's go back over here to our folder, our worksheet. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that World Happiness Report data object, and we're going to, after we do some manipulations on it here in this particular part of the chunk, we're going to assign it to a new data object we're going to call smaller df. Now the first thing we're doing in this chunk that we got from the rehearse is we're using the select function. Now one way I like to think about the difference between the select function and the filter function, the select works on columns, variables. And you remember here in the World Happiness Report, we've got a whole bunch of columns. Now it's really manageable, and we probably wouldn't need to select to reduce the size of this but that's what they did. So this first line is selecting for three variables: country variable, the freedom to make life choices variable, and the confidence in national governments. And so if we run this first part, I'm just going to use my cursor and highlight this first part there, stop before the pipe operator, control enter. I think it's command plus enter in a Mac. You can see we created this new smaller data frame. I'll open it up. And you can see we've just got those three variables that were selected. And we still have some NAs in here. So we've got to remove those. But one of the things to notice, we want to eventually look only at the year 2005, but we've selected out that column with the year. So we've got to think through how we're going to filter for the year if we've already gotten a new data set without that particular column in it. So let's go back here to our data set there, and you can see the next part is where we're actually filtering that to get rid of those NAs. So I'm going to again run this first part all the way there because we don't have a plus sign. Pipe operator, control enter. Now if we look at smaller DF, and if we scroll down real quickly, we shouldn't see any NAs. So we got rid of that problem. But let's go back here to our worksheet. So how do we filter to get the year 2005? Our data frame here, if we run all of these codes, doesn't have it. But remember, when R is running, it runs sequentially. In other words, this is saying take the World Happiness Report data frame, which does have all of the data, including the year column, and then select. So my thought is, what if I sneak right in here and put a filter making typos there, FILT, and there you go, it offers up the function. So I'll click that, and now I've got to just put in what I need. And all we have to do, our column has the name, our variable and the column has the name year. So I'll just type in year, and then I will put in two equal signs, which says I want to select only for those that have 2005. So now I can run this first part. Control enter. And if we look at smaller DF again, I still have all the columns there, but I've only got the years 2005. So I've already done that filtering. That took out a lot of data. So now I can go back here and just run the rest of it there to get rid of those NAs. So I'm going to this time run the whole thing. Control enter. Whoops. I forgot a little thing, that error. Remember, we need to use the pipe operator to make it run the next section. So I'm going to put in the type operator greater than and, so it will filter and then select these other things. So let's try running that. Okay, it appears to have run, so I'm going to look at smaller DF again. And you can see now we don't see any of the NAs, and we've only got that smaller data set that would be for the 2005, and we've got just the values for those two particular variables. So let's go back to our worksheet, Now we're going to calculate that correlation coefficient. Whoop. Shows a negative. So it shows a negative relationship. So let's go ahead and run the last part, which is to make the plot. And you can see that's what we've got. It's a slight negative slope between freedom of life, make life choices, and confidence in the government. So as the confidence in the government changes, of course, it's almost no slope whatsoever, isn't it? It's pretty doggone small. So that's how we do that first part. Hope it helps.